Hi Y10s, this is our next lesson on Romeo and Juliet. This video is here to support your learning with regards to your Google Classroom lessons. So obviously we're relying on you to do this the right way and do these tasks to help you continue to develop. When you come back, we're really hoping that there isn't this divergence between those who've done it and those who haven't, because that will be very difficult for those that haven't to keep up. And that will just prevent everybody from progressing. So it's vitally important that you complete these lessons. These videos are going to be here sporadically to help you to understand how you're doing and to develop your understanding of Romeo and Juliet. So we're doing a recap in this lesson of the main characters in Act 1, Scene 1. So in our last lesson we talked about the events of Act 1, Scene 1 and recapped that. So just to show that we're switched on, can you, for your starter, use 10 words to summarize what's happened in Act 1, Scene 1. So once you have watched this video, then hit the pause button, attempt that task yourself, and on the screen here will be all the questions, but you can also use the PowerPoint. So once you've heard from me, you're going to pause the video, answer the questions in your book. When you've finished that, unpause the video and we'll share how we did. So I'll give you some answers and you can see whether or not you managed to get it. Alright, so pausing now, doing the task. Okay, so some of the words we might have used could have been conflict, could have been grudge, would have been great ones to include. Ancient, so some of the words we learned from the prologue we can incorporate in our answer. So we could talk about two houses or two families. So your words will obviously be your own choice, and it's difficult for me to tell you exactly what you've written and whether that's right or wrong, but roughly you should be able to do that yourselves with and have a very good idea about what those words are and whether they're correct or not. Our next task is to look specifically at certain characters. So I want you to come up with some ideas about how they're feeling, what they're actually thinking, maybe that's different to what's being said, and then any evidence from their lines that are in the text that explain your point of view. So if you think that Tybalt, for example, is particularly of the belief that he hates all Montagues and just wants to fight, which is perfectly believable, we could say, well, he's angry, we could say he's violent, we could say he's hateful, he's argumentative, but we need to find a quote to support that. So your first task now is to find a quote from Act 1, Scene 1 that you can use from Tybalt that justifies his our belief that he is thinking that he hates all the Montagues and wants to fight. So pause the video, have a look. I've added a link in your Google Classroom lesson. Have a look through Act 1, Scene 1 for Tybalt's lines and come up with a quote that supports our point of view. Okay, pause that video. Okay, the best quote would have been, "Peace, I hate the word as I hate hell, all Montagues and thee." This is to Benvolio, which just shows that he's clearly up for a fight and not interested in keeping the peace like Benvolio. So your quote, that's a decent quote. You might have another one, but that should show that he is a particularly aggressive character. Right, the next, oh gosh, there we go. The next task is, can you do the same but for Benvolio, Romeo and Prince Aeschylus, because these are the four key characters in this scene, even though we see more of the sort of lower class of Capulets and Montagues in the very beginning of Samson, Gregory and Abraham, but don't worry about them, they're not that important. We want to look at these four characters. So you need to do the same thing, find 3 emotions for each, a thought and 1 to 3 examples, so more quotes that would support your thinking. Right, pause that video with this hand, pause the video, have a go at this, write it in your book, and then when you're finished, unpause it and we'll move on to the next task. Right. The last task is to then take those points and build them into something more useful. So we can't just rely on some bullet points and notes, that's pointless. We use that as part of our planning and that's about it. So what we're doing to recap is to now start analysing those characters in more detail. So we're going to write a PEE analytical paragraph for each of those main characters. So I'll provide you one now for Tybalt. where we've said our point, which is that when Tybalt enters the scene, he's shown to be angry and aggressive. So like I'm using the words that we had from our emotions. So I could have said argumentative, I could have said pugnacious, but I went with angry and aggressive. This is revealed when Tybalt says peace. I hate the word, so we're using a piece of evidence there to support our opinion. So the idea of hatred being a very powerful word, and then to explain it, so to justify the importance of that particular quotation within the scene. So there's an important, as it shows that Tybalt is a violent character and foreshadows the conflict in the Montagues and Capulets. So very simplistic. What's your opinion? Why do you think that? And then expand on it with a bit further explanation. All right. So I want you to repeat that now for Benvolio, Romeo, and Prince Aeschylus. Okay, that is your task to do now. So pause the video, give this a go, and then come back to me when you're finished. Okay, good. So the final task is for you to now you understand a bit more of the characters involved, to recount what happened involving those characters to a friend. So if you're an innocent bystander in Verona and you've just witnessed this fight between the Montagues and the Capulets, well, we'll assume you know who's who, and we'll assume you know about this ancient grudge. It doesn't seem to involve all aspects of the societal levels in Italy. So I want you to write a letter to a friend, sharing with them what you've witnessed. Now, some ideas of things you might include might be how the fight started, how Benvolio tried to stop it, Tybalt's attitude and what he was trying to do, the fight itself. You can be more creative in that piece, but then how Prince Aeschylus intervened and what he threatened the families with. So those are some of the ideas you might include in your letter. Make sure it actually is a letter, so that needs to have a greeting, a salutation. You need to sign off at the end, and it needs to maintain that correspondence style of writing. So slightly more formal, not using much colloquialisms, although some are okay in your description. Trying to keep it as though you are a character in the play writing to another person from the same time period. Right, you don't need to write in Shakespearean language as well. Let's just clarify that. You don't need to make it iambic pentameter or anything of thous and these, unless you really feel like you need to stretch yourself, in which case use Shakespearean language, but I'd prefer it if you just did it in your own language. What I'm going to ask you to do is write that in your book and take a photograph of it, upload it as an attachment to this lesson. Alternatively, you can type it straight into Google Classroom or Google Docs and upload that as an attachment, or Word, whatever. But you just attach evidence that you've done this task, okay? Because I'm going to be checking in with you quite regularly, especially on our new remote learning relationship thing. I'm going to want to give specific feedback to 3 to 5 of you where you are there improving your grammar, vocabulary, spelling, etc. Those kind of things to help you develop. So it's really important you upload evidence of these tasks. If they're not being done, there are obviously going to be repercussions. So make sure it's getting done, and I will see you next time.